Shane Tilden didn't expect his day to start with his 6-year-old son throwing up blueberry pancakes all over the backseat of his 10-year-old Corolla. "Buddy, next time, just say something before you feel like a volcano," Shane said, tossing a half-used roll of paper towels into a trash bag as he crouched beside the car in the parking lot of the grocery store. Braxton sniffled in the backseat, cheeks pale, his Batman backpack clutched to his chest. "I said I felt weird," Braxton mumbled. Shane ruffled his son's hair with a tired smile. "Yeth, you did, that's on me." He was already 20 minutes late for his afternoon shift at the hardware store, and he still had to grab crackers and ginger ale. As he rushed inside, he nearly collided with a woman standing near the floral display. A crash echoed through the store. The woman had dropped a small glass vase shards, scattered across the tile floor like glittering confetti. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she breathed, glancing down at the mess. "I didn't mean to." Before she could finish, Shane stepped in front of her, already reaching for the broom the cashier was retrieving. "Don't worry about it, it's just glass." "I can pay for it." "You weren't even holding it. The shelf was wobbly," he said, crouching down to sweep the sharp fragments into a dustpan. "Besides, it's not the end of the world." The woman knelt too, carefully picking up the larger pieces. Her nails were polished but short, and she didn't flinch when a tiny shard pricked her finger. She just shook it off and smiled. "Still, thank you, you didn't have to do that." Shane glanced up at her. She didn't look like someone who needed help. Her black coat looked expensive, her boots even more so. But there was something in her eyes, a kind of quiet exhaustion he recognized. "Glad to help," he said, standing up and tossing the debris. "I've been in worse cleanups." "Oh?" she asked, brushing her knees as they stepped aside together. "My kid threw up blueberry pancakes 10 minutes ago. This was a vacation compared to that." She actually laughed, and Shane felt something stir in his chest that hadn't moved in years. The cashier returned with a fresh vase and a hesitant look. "It's okay," the woman said, waving it off. "I'll pay for this one and the broken one." "You really don't have to." "Please," she said, holding his gaze. Her voice was soft but firm. "Let me." Shane didn't argue. He had to get back to Braxton anyway. "All right, take care." "You too," she said, watching him walk out. She didn't even know his name. 3 days later, Shane was restocking screws at aisle 7 when a familiar voice stopped him cold. "Do you always rescue people in grocery stores?" He turned to see her same calm eyes, but this time in a navy blazer, her heels clicking softly against the concrete floor. "Only on Thursdays," he said, blinking. "What are you doing here?" "I looked you up." He raised an eyebrow. "How?" "I remembered your name from your badge at the store. Shane Tilden. You didn't give me much to go on, but you'd be surprised what a determined woman and a LinkedIn search can do." He laughed, not sure whether to be flattered or mildly freaked out. "Well, welcome to Tilden Hardware. Can I help you with something?" "Yes, coffee." He blinked. "We don't sell coffee." "No," she said, smiling. "I want to take you out for one." Shane stared at her, tools forgotten in his hands. "Why?" "Because you were kind and funny, and I've thought about you too many times since that day." He hesitated. "I have a kid." "I figured." "I don't have much time or money or—" He trailed off. "I didn't ask for any of that," she said simply. "I asked for coffee." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "I get off in an hour." "Great," she said. "I'll wait." They sat at a small cafe 2 blocks away, the kind with chipped mugs and mismatched chairs. Shane stirred his coffee, unsure how to act around a woman who smelled like expensive perfume and carried herself like she was used to being in charge. "So," he said finally, "you never told me your name." Peyton Oakley. He paused. That sounds familiar. She sipped her tea. Ever heard of Oakley and Hart? He froze. You mean the tech firm? I'm the Oakley. Shane blinked. Wait, you're the CEO. She gave a small nod, eyes searching his face. He let out a breath, leaning back. Well, now I feel like an idiot. Why? Because I thought I was helping some random lady with a broken vase, not someone who probably owns the company that makes the vase. I liked that you didn't know, she said. You didn't care who I was, that's rare. Shane looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. All right, Peyton Oakley, but I still think I should have been the one buying the coffee. We'll call it even, she said, her voice warm. They talked for another hour, about everything, about nothing. Her life in boardrooms and airports, his life juggling a second job and bedtime stories. It shouldn't have made sense. But it did. As they walked back to his car, she paused. Can I meet him? Braxton. She nodded. Yeah, Shane said slowly, but only if you're serious. I don't do anything halfway, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Especially not people. He looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something close to hope. I'll pick you up tomorrow, he said, if you're sure. I'm sure, she said, her eyes locked on his. I think it was the moment you picked up that broken glass. Shane opened the front door with his keys clenched between his teeth, a paper bag of groceries tucked under one arm, and Braxton balanced on his hip, still flushed and quiet from the fever he'd been fighting off. Inside, the apartment was clean but small, 2 bedrooms, a living room doubling as a play zone, and a kitchen with cabinets that groaned when opened too far. The radiator hissed like it had opinions, and the window near the sink didn't close all the way. Go lie down, bud, Shane murmured, lowering Braxton onto the worn plaid couch. I'll bring you some soup in a minute. Braxton nodded, curling up with his favorite threadbare blanket. Shane watched him for a second longer than necessary. Then he moved to the stove, pouring broth into a pot and turning the burner on low. The knock came just as he was pulling a spoon from the drawer. He didn't expect her to actually show up. Peyton stood in the hallway, holding a small canvas tote and wearing jeans and a gray sweater that didn't scream designer but probably was. Her hair was swept up, not styled, and her eyes flicked past him toward the apartment. I brought some books for Braxton and a puzzle, the kind with dinosaurs eating other dinosaurs, she said. I read somewhere that's the only kind kids care about. Shane shifted slightly, not quite opening the door wider. You didn't have to bring anything. I know, but I wanted to. He stepped aside, and she entered without hesitation. Her eyes landed on the couch. Is he okay? Better than yesterday, still a little warm. She nodded, then crouched beside the couch. Hi, Braxton, I'm Peyton. Braxton blinked at her, then turned his head toward Shane. She's pretty. Shane nearly dropped the spoon. Peyton laughed gently, not mocking, and reached into the tote. I brought you a book about a robot who can't stop burping. Think you can handle that? Braxton sat up slowly. If the robot wins. He definitely does. Shane watched as she handed him the book, then turned toward the kitchen with a quiet kind of ease. She didn't comment on the apartment's size or the chipped tile near the baseboard. She just leaned against the counter as Shane ladled soup into a bowl. You cook. When I can, I'm not terrible. She nodded, looking around. You've done a lot with this place. He handed her a bowl and leaned against the opposite counter. It's not much. It's clean, warm. There's a dinosaur blanket on the couch and a paper turkey taped to the fridge. Looks like home to me. He watched her sip the soup, her expression unreadable. So this is what you do. Drop in on strangers who sweep glass off the floor and charm their kids with dinosaur puzzles. She set the bowl down and met his gaze. I needed to be around something real. Shane frowned. What does that mean? I've been surrounded by men in suits with fake smiles and hidden knives for 5 years. Everyone wants something. Everyone's performing. That day in the grocery store, you helped me without asking anything. You didn't even blink. I didn't know who you were. That's exactly why it meant something. He folded his arms. So what now, you want to keep visiting? No, she said, stepping closer. I want to see where this goes, if you want that too. Shane looked past her to Braxton, who was now giggling at something in the book, the fever forgotten for the moment. Then back to Peyton, who stood in his kitchen like she belonged there without trying to. I don't have time for games, and I'm not going to drag Braxton through something uncertain. Neither am I. He studied her face, looking for the edge, the catch, the part where this turned into something temporary. But there wasn't one. Just her, standing there with her sleeves pushed to her elbows and her eyes steady. Okay, he said quietly, we can try. The next week passed like a dream that was too careful to name. Peyton didn't make promises, and Shane didn't ask questions he wasn't ready to hear the answers to. She came by twice more, once with a build-your-own-fort kit, once with a homemade lasagna that Braxton declared the best noodles in the galaxy. She never stayed late, never overstepped, just offered what she could and listened. Then Friday came. He answered the door with a towel over his shoulder and flour on his hands. Peyton, this time, was different. Tailored black coat, phone in one hand, car keys in the other. Her face was tight. I leave for Tokyo tomorrow morning, she said. 5 days. Shane nodded slowly. Okay. I didn't want to just disappear. I appreciate that. She hesitated, then added, my life moves fast. I'm in and out of cities so often I forget which time zone I'm in. But I haven't forgotten you or Braxton. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her. I'm not going anywhere. We'll be here when you get back. She breathed in sharply, then stepped forward and kissed him. Not gentle, not rushed, just real. When she pulled back, her voice was lower. Don't disappear on me. I won't. She left with the same quiet confidence she always carried. But Shane saw the flicker of something else in her eyes as she turned toward the sleek black car waiting at the curb. That night, after Braxton fell asleep with his hand still clutching the robot book, Shane sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the skyline through the window. Somewhere out there, she was packing for another country, another world. And yet, for the first time in years, he didn't feel left behind. The snow had started falling late Sunday evening, soft, steady flakes that blanketed the streetlights and quieted the buzz of the city. Shane stood at the window, one hand resting on the cold glass, watching the world turn white. Braxton was fast asleep in his room, the faint glow of his nightlight casting dinosaur shadows on the walls. Peyton's flight had left 2 days ago. No calls, no emails, not that he expected them, she had warned him. Still, the silence felt heavier than it should have. He didn't hear from her until the following Thursday. The knock on the door came just after 6, when he was finishing dinner, and Braxton was watching a cartoon with the volume too high. Shane opened the door to find her standing there, coat dusted with snow, looking like she hadn't slept on the plane or maybe at all. I came straight from the airport. He gestured for her to come inside. You look like you haven't eaten in a day. Try 3, she muttered, stepping out of her boots. Don't ever attend a week of back-to-back investor meetings in Tokyo. It's like being chewed up by a time zone and spit out by a boardroom. I made chili, he offered. She raised an eyebrow. Is it edible? I think so. Braxton hasn't thrown up yet. She laughed, shaking her head. That's the standard now. It's a solid one. They sat at the small kitchen table, the warmth from the stove spreading through the space. Peyton's shoulders gradually loosened, her eyes less guarded. "You okay?" Shane asked, watching her push the spoon around her bowl. She looked up. "No, but I will be." He waited. "My CFO quit mid-trip. Walked out after a screaming match with a board member. Spent 2 days cleaning it up. Then my head of marketing decided it was a good time to pitch a rebrand that would cost us $6 million and alienate our base. Sounds like a fun time. I'm starting to wonder if I built an empire or a circus." "You're here now," he said. She met his gaze. "Yeah, and I kept thinking about this place, about you too, about how steady it feels." "It's not fancy." "No," she said, "that's why I like it." Braxton wandered into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Is it snowing?" Peyton reached for his hand without hesitation. "It is. Want to see?" They stood by the window together, the boy's small fingers wrapped around hers. Shane watched them, something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. After Braxton returned to bed, Shane poured her a second cup of tea, and they sat in quiet for a while. Then she spoke again, her voice softer. "My mother died when I was young. My dad ran the company. He raised me like an executive, not a daughter." Shane didn't interrupt. "I was in meetings by the time I was 16. I was running departments before I was legal to drink. When he passed, I inherited everything plus the responsibility of keeping it from falling apart." "That's a lot." "It never stops. I don't know how to slow down or what to do when I do." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You could start by staying for breakfast tomorrow." She blinked. "Breakfast?" "Yeah, French toast. I even use cinnamon when I'm feeling wild." Her mouth quirked up. "What if your boss calls?" "He can wait, you can't." She looked down into her mug, then back at him. "You're dangerous, Shane." "Why?" "Because you make me want things I forgot I was allowed to want." He stood and crossed to her, his hand brushing hers as he took the cup. "You're allowed, you just have to stop running from them." She stood too, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then, quietly, she reached up and kissed him, not hurried, not uncertain, just present. When she pulled back, her breath caught. "Can't promise anything long-term, not yet, my life is." "I'm not asking you to promise forever," he said, "just tomorrow morning." She nodded. The next day, when Braxton came into the kitchen in his dinosaur pajamas, Peyton was already there, flipping toast in the pan while Shane poured orange juice. "Are you making breakfast with my dad?" Braxton asked, clearly stunned. "I am." The boy tilted his head. "Do you know how to cook?" "Not even a little," she said, "but I'm a very good helper." Braxton's grin stretched ear to ear. Later that morning, after breakfast had turned into a flower fight and Braxton was building a pillow fort in the living room, Peyton pulled Shane aside. "I need to show you something," she said, pulling out her phone. She tapped the screen, then turned it toward him. It was a picture, a press release, actually. A photo of Peyton standing in front of a sleek glass building with the words, "Oakley and Hart opens Community Tech Center in Brooklyn." Shane read the headline, then looked at her. "You're opening something here." "Yes, I bought the old library on Elm Street. We're converting it into a tech hub for underfunded schools. Classes, equipment, mentors." His eyebrows lifted. "That's huge." She held his gaze. "I wanted it to be near you." He stared at her. "Peyton." "I don't expect anything from you, but this is something I can give, something real." "You didn't have to do that." "I know, I wanted to." For once, he didn't have the words. But she didn't need them. She reached for his hand, and this time he let her take it. The air inside the newly renovated tech center still carried the faint scent of fresh paint and sawdust, but the polished floors gleamed beneath the overhead lights, and rows of state-of-the-art computers were already in place. Peyton stood near the entrance, her heels silent against the smooth tile, watching as volunteers adjusted the chairs and prepped the welcome table for the grand opening. Shane entered carrying a stack of printed name tags, Braxton trailing behind him with a clipboard almost too big for his arms. 2 more schools confirmed, Shane said as he handed her the list. That brings it to 11, and someone from the mayor's office is coming. Peyton glanced at the clipboard. Braxton was gripping like it was a golden ticket. Are you the official manager of the guest list? I'm the inspector, he said seriously. Check everything before people come in. Excellent, she replied without smiling too much. I was hoping we'd hired someone with experience. He nodded and marched off to examine the snack table. Shane folded his arms and leaned slightly toward her. You sure you're ready for this? I've launched entire product lines in 3 countries in 1 week, she said, but I've never been nervous like this. He didn't tease her for it. He just watched her eyes track every detail, every corner. It's because it matters. She turned to him. It does. You did something good here. We did. Don't give me credit for carrying folding chairs and fixing a clogged sink. You didn't need to show up at all, she said, voice quieter now. But you did, every day. You listened to the architects, you calmed the committee when they panicked over zoning permits. You even negotiated with that guy who owned the bakery next door like a hostage negotiator. He wanted to block the fire exit with a cupcake stand. And you convinced him not to. Shane shrugged, offered to build him a portable one. You're very hard to walk away from, you know. Good, he said, stepping closer, because I'm not letting you. She lifted her chin. What if I mess this up? What if I mess us up? You're not perfect, that's the best part. She blinked. How is that the best part? Because I'm not perfect either, but I know how to stay, and I know you're worth staying for. Her eyes searched his face as if trying to memorize it. I got offered a seat on the board of an international finance firm last week. Are you taking it? I turned it down. Why? Because it would have meant relocating to Zurich. He exhaled slowly. Zurich. I didn't even hesitate. I'm done chasing titles. What are you chasing now? She reached into her coat pocket and unfolded a piece of paper. This is the application for a non-profit license. I want to make this center permanent, expand it, build more. Shane stared at the form. You're not doing this under Oakley and Hart. I'm doing this as Peyton, just Peyton. He nodded once, then reached out and took her free hand. Then let's build it right. The first guests arrived just after noon. Kids with wide eyes and nervous smiles, teachers in jackets dusted with snow, reporters with cameras slung around their necks. Peyton stood near the entry with Shane at her side, introducing herself not as a CEO, but as someone who wanted to make a difference. Braxton took his role as inspector seriously, checking off names, handing out badges, and offering the occasional sticker to anyone who looked nervous. An older woman in a red coat approached Peyton near the robotic programming display. You're the one who started all this. I had help, Peyton said. Well, it's a blessing. My granddaughter's school hasn't had enough computers in years. She wants to be an engineer. She'll have everything she needs here, Peyton said gently. The woman squeezed her hand. You did a good thing, dear. Shane watched as the woman walked away, Peyton's expression unreadable as she turned toward him. I didn't think I'd feel this much, she admitted. He smiled, eyes warm. You're allowed to. Later that evening, after the last guest had left and the lights had dimmed to a soft glow, Peyton sat on one of the benches near the 3D printer station. Shane sat beside her, their knees brushing. "You know," he said, "I've been thinking about something." She turned her head toward him. "Yes. I used to think loving someone like you would always feel like trying to touch something too bright, like I'd get burned. And now I think you were never the fire," he said. "You were the match I needed." She didn't respond right away. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small velvet box. "This wasn't planned," she said, fingers curling around it, "and it's not what you think." He raised an eyebrow. She opened it to reveal a simple silver key with a small dinosaur charm dangling from it. "It's a second set," she said, voice unsteady, "to my place, not because I expect you to move in tomorrow, but because I want you to know the door's open. Always." He stared at the key, then her. "I've never had a key that came with a choice," he said, "only responsibilities." "This comes with both," she said, "because I'm not just asking you, I'm asking both of you." He looked at the charm, then slipped the key into his pocket. "I think we'll need to bring a bookshelf. Braxton's library is outgrowing the apartment." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "We'll make room." Outside, snow began to fall again, dusting the sidewalk and quieting the street. Inside, the tech center hummed softly, machines powering down, lights dimming to a gentle glow. But in the quiet, something had begun, not a business, not a deal. A life. One built slowly, deliberately, not on glass floors and corporate ladders, but on soup shared at kitchen tables, robot books, and the kind of love that doesn't ask for perfection, only presence. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them was running. The wind outside Peyton's townhouse whistled sharply that morning, tugging at the bare branches lining the narrow street. But inside, the warmth from the fireplace mingled with the scent of cinnamon and coffee. Shane leaned over the kitchen island, helping Braxton carefully pour pancake batter into dinosaur-shaped molds while Peyton stood nearby, flipping through a folder of zoning applications. "I think this one's going to look like a stegosaurus," Braxton said proudly, gripping the handle of the ladle with both hands. "Only if it survives the flip," Shane replied, peering over the edge of the griddle. "Last time it looked more like an extinct blob." Peyton glanced up from her documents. That was a velociblob, very rare, highly intelligent. Shane shot her a grin, and Braxton giggled, nudging his dad with his elbow. Outside of the laughter and warmth, a quiet rhythm had taken hold, a rhythm none of them had expected, but all of them had learned to trust. Peyton no longer rushed between cities. Shane no longer counted the hours before shifts. Braxton now had a drawer in Peyton's hallway with his name on it and a toothbrush that stayed there. "Hey, Peyton," Braxton asked, glancing over his shoulder while still holding the ladle. "Can we paint the wall in the new center with glow in the dark stars?" Shane raised an eyebrow. "That's oddly specific." "I saw it in a book," Braxton explained. "If we have stars, kids won't be scared at night if the lights go out." Peyton set the folder down and walked over to him, kneeling to his level. "If you help me paint them, I'll make sure they're the brightest stars in Brooklyn." "And can we make a rocket corner?" he added quickly. Shane laughed. "Now it's a space station." "Deal," Peyton said seriously, holding out her hand. "Rocket corner and glow stars." Braxton shook her hand with exaggerated formality, then turned back to the pancakes. Shane watched her as she stood again, her expression soft. "You're really doing it." "I said I would." "No, I mean all of it," he said. "The center, the community programs, mentoring. You turned a press release into something that actually matters." "I had the resources for years," she said, her voice lower now. "I just didn't know what to do with them." "You found a way." "I found a reason." Their eyes met, and he stepped closer, brushing a thumb gently along her cheekbone. I know what it cost you. Walking away from the board, scaling back at Oakley and Hart. I didn't walk away, she said. I just stopped letting it be the only thing. Do they hate you for it? Some of them, but the ones who matter, they understand. She paused. And the ones who don't, they're not the reason I get up in the morning anymore. Before Shane could respond, the doorbell rang. Peyton blinked. It's Saturday. I wasn't expecting anyone. Shane wiped his hands on a towel and followed her to the door, Braxton trailing behind, curious. A delivery man handed over a slim envelope and tipped his cap. Courier service. Signature required. Peyton signed, frowning as she opened it. Well, Shane asked. She looked up, stunned. It's a grant from the city for the tech center, the one we almost gave up on because of the budget shortfall. Shane took the letter from her hands and skimmed it. This is huge. It's enough to open 2 more centers, she whispered. One in the Bronx, one in Queens. Braxton tugged on her sleeve. Does that mean more rocket corners? She laughed, lifting him in her arms. It means a whole rocket fleet. Shane stepped forward and wrapped his arms around both of them, the paper still crinkled in his hand. You did it, Peyton. No, she said, resting her forehead against his. We did. Later that evening, after Braxton had fallen asleep on the couch mid-space mission, Peyton and Shane stood on the balcony, wrapped in a shared blanket as the city lights blinked below them. I was thinking, she said, eyes on the skyline, about the way everything unfolded. That day in the grocery store, the glass, the vase. I keep wondering if it would have happened if I hadn't knocked it over. It would have, Shane replied, but maybe not the same way. I didn't believe in fate before, she admitted. I believed in plans, structure, control. And now I believe in second chances, and the kind of chaos that brings you exactly where you're supposed to be. He turned toward her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I used to believe love had to be earned with sacrifice, that you had to give up everything to deserve it. What changed? You. She rested her hand over his heart. I want this, all of it. The quiet mornings, the pancake blobs, the rocket corners. I want a life that doesn't start when the work ends. I want one that grows with it. He leaned in, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Then let's live it together. She pulled back slightly, her eyes shining. There's just one thing missing. He raised an eyebrow. She slipped a small ring into his palm. A simple gold band engraved with a tiny star pattern around the edge. Not a proposal, she said, a promise to keep choosing this, every day. He swallowed hard, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a ring of his own. Sleek, elegant, hers. I had a feeling you'd say that. They stood in silence, laughter caught between them, until they exchanged rings beneath the city sky. The sound of a distant siren and the hum of life folding around them like a vow. Months passed. The tech center flourished. Braxton's rocket corner became so popular it expanded into a full imagination bay, complete with a constellation ceiling. Shane moved in not because they needed more space, but because they'd stopped needing distance. Peyton found herself in more classrooms than boardrooms, guiding young minds instead of portfolios. She still wore sharp heels, but now they clicked across linoleum floors and community stages. On a quiet Sunday morning, Peyton sat on the front steps while Braxton chased a paper rocket across the sidewalk, and Shane watered the tiny herb garden they'd planted in mismatched pots. Hey, Shane called, brushing dirt from his hands. You ever think you'd end up here? She smiled, watching Braxton tumble into the grass. No, but can't imagine being anywhere else. He joined her on the steps, their hands finding each other's without effort. I used to think love was something that happened in grand, impossible ways, she said softly. It kind of did, he replied, just not the way we expected. She rested her head on his shoulder, like our way better. And as Braxton launched his rocket into the air with a triumphant yell, Peyton and Shane sat in the golden light of late morning. Surrounded by the life they'd built, a life born from unexpected moments, held together by quiet choices, and anchored in a love as real and rooted as anything either of them had ever known.